Vindication shall be mine. No, in all seriousness, when you talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, and specifically, I talked about it for a number of years now, is that Alex Smith is okay. You can win games with him. You can make the playoffs with him. But at some point in time, he's not good enough to take you all the way. He's just not that caliber of dude. No matter how much you try to speak logic to NFL media, NFL fans, Chiefs fans specifically, it's like the message didn't get through. And ultimately, the only way you were ever going to find out where things really fell for the Chiefs in this whole thing was for this organization to ultimately move on from Alex Smith, which, with the trading up to draft Patrick Mahomes 10th overall in the 2017 draft, we finally got that. This past offseason, the Chiefs were able to dump Alex Smith. I say that, dump Alex Smith onto the Redskins and let them overpay for him for his past largely average to slightly above average performances. And my thing is that if Alex Smith was truly that great, if Alex Smith was truly that even good, the Chiefs wouldn't have drafted Patrick Mahomes and especially traded up and given up a future first-round pick in order to get the dude. It's like Andy Reid, the guy that knows more offensive football than any of us combined, the guy that has helped create or give opportunities to several guys that went on to become NFL head coaches, that have won Super Bowls, coached in Super Bowls, da-da-da-da-da. This guy, by trading up for Patrick Mahomes, was telling you that Alex Smith wasn't that dude, but he believed that Patrick Mahomes could be. And I defer in this particular case to his judgment because he should know better than us, and clearly he did know better than a lot of other folks. Is there any doubt now that what was holding the Chiefs back in the past, in part, was the quarterback? In part. I say in part, because that's not all of it, that's for sure. But Jesus Christ, the Patrick Mahomes era began like a lion in 2018. I mean, you talk about his history-making start to the season, that 5-0 start. His team was 9-2 heading into the bye. Even when he had the drama happen mid-season with the video being released of Kareem Hunt kicking a woman, it didn't matter. It wasn't stopping this team. You look at them, offensively, they were a freaking juggernaut. They scored 30 or more points in 10 of their 12 wins. And even the 4 losses that they have, look at the number of points that they scored. 40 points against New England, 51 against the fucking Rams, 28 against the Chargers, and 31 against the Seahawks. So in their 4 losses, their offense scored at least 28 points. In 3 of their losses, they scored at least 30 points. In 2 of their losses, they scored at least 40 points. And in 1 of their losses, they scored 51 points. Which, if memory serves me correctly, is the most points that any team has ever scored in a losing effort in the NFL. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. But holy Christ. Patrick Mahomes was a shot of life into the veins of the NFL, the league, the Chiefs organization, football fans in general, Chiefs fans specifically. After so many years of willfully neglecting the quarterback position in the first round of the draft, going back all the way to when? 1983, and Todd Blackledge, when they took him in the first round out of Penn State, passing on guys like Jim Kelly and freaking Dan Marino, and hell, I'll even show Ken O'Brien some damn love here. It had been 34 years since they took a quarterback in round 1, and now Chiefs fans have to be asking the question, what the fuck took so long? But maybe more so just saying, well, we're glad we finally got something right. We certainly did with him. Patrick Mahomes was the MVP of the league, and you could certainly understand why he threw for over 5,000 yards. He had 50 touchdown passes. I mean, he was a predominant storyline in the league this year. He has already cemented himself as an elite type of guy. He's already cemented himself as one of the future faces of this league for many years to come. And it most certainly helps when you have guys like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce to throw the football to. You're talking about players that weren't marquee draft choices. Travis Kelce was a 3rd-round pick out of Cincinnati in 2013, and part of that was due to off-the-field concerns. And all Kelce did this past year, over 100 receptions, over 1,300 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns. Then you've got Tyreek Hill, out of West Alabama. What was he, a 5th-round pick because of the off-the-field concerns with the felony conviction for domestic violence? And all Tyreek, the freaking cheetah that he is, sits there and does is get over almost 1,500 receiving yards. I mean, he's just a game changer. He is just incredibly difficult to defend because with that quickness, with that speed, that agility, if he makes one little subtle move on you, it's over. So it's a great situation to bring a young quarterback into. He was able to learn from a professional like an Alex Smith. Observe, learn, shadow, be mentored by this guy for a year. You know, Alex Smith's the type of guy that you want a young quarterback around because Alex Smith does a lot of good things the right way and conducts himself like a man, conducts himself like a professional. So we did get to learn behind a guy like this for a year. And then he comes in with a great coach like Andy Reid into a great system like the Chiefs have on offense with great offensive talent around him. Maybe the level of performance of Patrick Mahomes should be surprising, but the fact that he came out of the gates and performed well in 2018 probably shouldn't. And God knows the Chiefs really needed that because their defense was boo-boo, bad, terrible, awful. Which is crazy when you think about the fact they had a defensive lineman like Chris Jones have 15 and a half sacks. You had D Ford on the edge, 13 sacks. They were generating pass rush. They were getting pressure, and they needed to because they couldn't stop anybody any shit else time. Like, you look at this Chiefs team and you said even if you had a little bit of defense, just a little bit of defense, you could have been Super Bowl champs this year. But even that being said, you look at the way the AFC Championship game broke down, and you look at this Chiefs team. Mahomes was bad in the first half of the game. That offense was really bad. They were in the game, kind of, but you're like, I don't know about all this. And then the Chiefs come back in the second half like gangbusters. Mahomes is incredible. This offense is damn near unstoppable. And if it's not potentially for a D Ford offsides penalty, like you play your whole life on the line of scrimmage like that, you have to have enough awareness to know to not line up in the fucking neutral zone in that situation. You're potentially one dumb dick penalty away from making it to the Super Bowl. You most certainly feel like you would have the confidence that in a revenge game, they would have smoked the fucking Rams. Like, there's got to be a heartbreaking finish to the season for Chiefs fans because you finally got that level of dude at the quarterback position. You've never had a talent like that in this organization at the quarterback position. You've got these weapons on offense, but now your defense stinks, even though you got guys putting up great numbers as pass rushers. And you get to this moment in time, AFC Championship game, a chance to win. You're at home. You can beat Brady. You can beat Belichick. And you could take the reins and ownership of the AFC going forward. And then you get a goddamn offsides penalty. And then you don't get the ball in overtime and all the skip-de-skip and whoop-de-woo. I'm sorry, Chiefs fans. I know that's got to be heartbreaking. Having your team season end because of a double doink off the goalpost and crossbar is bad enough. Thinking that your team could actually go all the way, being in a position where you're potentially one play away from going all the way and then to have it be taken away from you, that's got to be a tough, tough deal. And the concern now for the Chiefs is, their defense needs a ton of work. They have less than $10 million in salary cap space. You got to figure out what you're going to do with guys, notable free agents like D Ford and Steven Nelson. And it's kind of like, on the one hand, you don't want to lose them. But on the other hand, if you don't pay them and they go, how much are you really missing? I know that sounds crazy, but, you had those two dudes who had really nice years, and your defense still sucked. So what does it matter? Why would you pay these guys for the right, potentially, for your defense to still suck? And you still got to figure out other free agents like Alan Bailey, Chris Conley, Demetrius Haylers, Mitch Morse, Anthony Sherman. There's only so much money to go around. And you look at the Chiefs and you're like, man, maybe they are going to have to finally trade or cut Justin Houston and get like $14 million of cap savings. That would be a good place to start. I would see no reason why you'd bring him back for 2019. But I look at this and I'm like, where the heck did some money go? Just paying guys like Eric Fisher and stuff on the offensive line way more than you should. That's where the money goes. But this Chiefs team If they can get that defense right, could be right back in the mix again in 2019. But they do need a lot of help on defense. Now, that's not to ignore the offensive side of the ball. Now that you cut Kareem Hunt, you need a feature back in that offense. I don't know that that requires a first-round pick in this year's draft, but it probably requires a day 2 pick. Because you don't want to have to always count on Mahomes having to throw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. Like that can potentially be a once-in-a-career, once-in-a-generation type of season. Even with the growth in performance of NFL offenses, that's still really hard. You don't have many of those seasons in the history books. So you've got to be able to better balance out your offense. And by better balancing out your offense, you can also potentially help your defense because, again, that defense needs a lot of work. You need help all throughout that secondary. At corner, you look at safety. Eric Berry is still a good player when he's on the field, but he's hardly ever on the field. You need some impact guys in that secondary. You definitely could use some edge rush depth, even if you retain D Ford, but especially if you don't. You've got to find ways to get more speed and athleticism in the back end of that defense. That defensive line, that front three is really good. Go elsewhere on the edges. You could say they're good with D Ford, but again, how much did it really matter? They've got to get better on defense because if they do, we could be talking about this Chiefs team having to wait a year, but in 2019 truly taking the reins over in the AFC.